The Prime Minister has signalled a much more inclusive and consultative approach to governing, not just within the Labor Party, but also with the crossbenchers in the Senate. The Greens are likely to hold the balance of power in the Senate after the election, making them important players for a Gillard government. Greens leader Bob Brown joins us now in the Parliament House studio, having a bit of a cough. Senator Brown, good morning.
Good morning, Fran.
Better get you some water, I think. Senator Brown, what sort of Prime Minister do you think Julia Gillard will be?
I expect she'll be a outstanding Labor Prime Minister. She's the very fact that we've got the first woman to be a Prime Minister in Australia is exciting. I come from a party which has got a majority of women in it, both at state and federal level, and I think this nation needs to have women properly represented in Parliament. And Julia Gillard is intelligent. She's straight talking. In my dealings with her, she's honest and direct. That doesn't mean to say she agrees on everything, far from it. But I like that style of politics.
She made much of the fact as her justification for taking the job, as it all rolled out in the last 36 hours, was that Labor had lost its way. Was Kevin Rudd the problem for Labor, or is it Labor's policies? Does a change of leadership change anything?
It's both. Let me say this, Kevin Rudd's got a great record for himself to look back on. Not least, he saved this nation from recession, and that means hundreds of thousands of people's jobs and their small businesses when the opposition was opposing the action he took. It was the Greens who supported him. And that alone is testimony when you compare that progress, economic safety, if you like, from a impending global recession compared to other countries like Australia. But I think the Labor Party, like the Liberal Party, I heard Tony Abbott talking about sharing the noble ideas of the Labor Party yesterday in commenting on Julia Gillard. I think their ideas are very often last century. They haven't caught up with the world of 21st century. Climate change action failed. It was the wrong prescription. I think the CPRS as put forward by the Rudd government is dead. It was a prescription for failure and a $20 billion expense on taxpayers at that. And I think Julia Gillard's now talking about a carbon price, which is what we Greens have been talking about in recent months. We've got up a carbon tax as a basis. This is a Ross Garnaut prescription. It's a good basis for future talks for action on climate change with the new Prime Minister.
Just on that, how do you read her promise to re-prosecute the case for a carbon price after the election? That's how she put it.
Well, I'm optimistic about that. We do need to hear from Julia Gillard, however, and remember this, the Labor Party is a captive of the coal industry in Australia, this prodigious polluter both here and overseas. We do need to hear from her very clearly in the run to the election what it is actually she's going to be offering. She just can't offer that to the Greens after the election. The people of Australia have a right to know what the action prescription is going to be from the government.
If you describe the Labor Party then, I think, as a captive of the coal industry, Julia Gillard has announced they're going back to the drawing board on the mining tax. We don't exactly know what that means, but negotiations are now starting again. You're a supporter of the tax. Do you fear the transition to Prime Minister Julia Gillard is a victory in some way for the miners here?
Oh, well, clearly it is. And she talked about supporting Australians who are hard workers, but not those who are complainers. Now, I think in the mining industry we see both, but it's their complaining that struck a very rich seam of backward march here in Canberra, and of course they've had instant victory there. I think the prescription for the mining tax can bear some altering, but I think the dividend for the Australian people from that mining tax ought to be forthcoming. Otherwise, other Australians have to pay the tax, or there'll be cuts in services and public service jobs as a result. Can't have it both ways. But the miners have been excellent, top-notch complainers about that tax. We now have to see what constructive alternative Julia Gillard can come forward with, because it's part of the budget. You can't remove that $9 to $12 billion injection into future budgets without somebody else suffers, and that's not going to be the miners, that's going to be ordinary Australians.
Okay, let's talk about polling. A lot of people caught on the hop by this move of Julia Gillard to the Prime Ministership. Labor's vote, some big part of it seems to have gone over to the Greens in recent times. Do you think the vote for the Greens will decline as a result of this leadership switch?
I'd expect, I might be wrong on this, I'd expect we'll see settling back in the polls before they progress again. That's been the history for the Greens. It happened when Kevin Rudd became the leader and the great excitement leading to the last election, but we still won 2 new seats in the Senate, where we've got a great prospect of winning more seats in the Senate. But let me warn about this. The alternative is for Tony Abbott to get control of the Senate. Now imagine that, a Gillard government after this spring, after the election, with an Abbott majority in the Senate able to block. And the coalition is a blocking party. It's very negative when it gets into control in the Senate, unlike the constructive alternatives the Greens put forward. So voters have a choice there, and we'll be campaigning hard to maximise that vote for the Greens in the Senate.
Okay, Bob Brown, thank you very much for joining us. And just very briefly, in 10 seconds or less, I presume you think the seat of Melbourne now is definitely winnable for the Greens with Lindsay Tanagon.
Yes, Adam Bant is able to win that seat, but we'll have to run a very good campaign, and I intend to be part of it.
Senator Bob Brown, thank you very much for joining us. News is next, and then our Friday panel coming out to discuss the events of the last 36 hours.